Hugh, it was interesting as you watched the play because they came in. We talked about it all last week. They were banged up, right? They didn't have Christian Watson. They didn't have Jair Alexander. But then when they lost that left guard, I think it was Nolan Smith took him out as the guy was pulling on the run play. And Nolan Smith, we're going to talk a lot about him today. What a game Nolan had. When he took him out, Hugh, and they didn't have their left guard, it just felt like that was like the tipping point, the breaking point for them. They didn't have enough yesterday.
Yeah, man. And we knew it was going to probably play out the way that it did. It played out the way that I thought it might. Jalen was a little rusty. But the defense travels well, man. I think that's the one thing that we hang our hat on is the fact that we play really solid defense. Unfortunate that Nakobe Dean got hurt.
Yep.
That's a blow to that side of the ball. But for the most part, that was a physical game yesterday, man. And the defense asserted their dominance from the beginning all the way to the end.
You know what it was? It was very typical of a lot of Eagles games this year, where the defense and the running game are the story, and the quarterback makes enough plays where they put enough points on the board, but it's not like overwhelming. And yesterday, the defense was incredible. They held that Packers team. I know they were without their top, deep threat, but Hugh, the Packers had averaged 27 points a game this year. They scored 10, and it felt like they barely could move the football at times. The pass rush was really good, led by Nolan Smith. I'm amazed how good the secondary was yesterday against a quarterback that could do some things. I mean, Jordan Love has had a good start to his career, and people believe in him. He couldn't find anyone outside. Quinyon played really well. How about that interception by Darius Slay, like holding off the receiver and making that catch?
That was a beautiful play. You know what the unfortunate thing about that, and I'm not picking on Slay, but as an OG. You gotta stay on the field, man. I mean, I know he got banged up a little bit. You got especially when your team needs you, because when he went out, that was a recipe that could have went either way for us. You got to be out there on the field. I know he knows that, and it's unfortunate that he's been dealing with a lot all season long. But that was the thing that I was worried about when he went out. I was like, damn, this might change some things.
You know what it was for me? It was just every step of the way, every time there was a moment in that game, you felt like, could it go the other way? Could get a little nervous? The Eagles stepped up and made a play. The Packers had a couple moments where they scored some points, but the Eagles responded each time with some big runs or some big defensive plays. Nolan stood out to me yesterday, had, I think, the best game of his career in his biggest spot. Quinyon, Slay, Zach Bond. Unfortunately, you mentioned Nakobe got hurt, but we talked about it all season. Their defense drove it was the story for this year, right? Defense and running the football. Yesterday, they were who they were yesterday.
Yeah, and that's what you need, man. It's one of those things where going into this game, with Jalen not playing as long as he's not played, he held the ball a little bit. But the defense was the deciding factor in this game. That's the beautiful part about it. When I said it last week, I know we were saying it a little tongue-in-cheek, but when you're playing, if you're the number one defense in the league going into the playoffs, that's nothing to sneeze at. That says to me that regardless of what your offense is doing, that defense is going to keep you in the game. And that's exactly what they did yesterday. It was 10-zip forever. Mm-hmm. It was 10-zip forever. And they were able to hold it down long enough for the offense to get something going a little bit, and we were able to win the game. That's all you can ask from your defense.
Well, and they caused 4 turnovers. 215-592-9494. Started off right away. So we do the pregame show yesterday. Hugh, I hop in the car, and I'm heading home, and I was listening to Merrill and Mike in the first quarter, and then I'll kind of rewatch on DVR when I get home and watch the whole thing. But Hugh, I heard the roar of the crowd as soon as the opening kick happened, and then they kind of untangled the scramble, and you realize Oren Burks forced a fumble. That was the tone setter for the entire day. And look, Burks had to come in to also play defense yesterday because Nakobe got hurt. But I thought that set the tone for the whole game, that he was able to make that play, and the Packers, who already were behind the 8 ball, that just felt like it wasn't going to be their day.
Man, I tell you, it's one of those things when you see that hit. That was a textbook hit, because as soon as he hit him on the button. He hit him in the front of his. They called back in the day putting that bike on him. He lowered the helmet and he hit him with his face mask, and as soon as he hit him, it was like that pilot light blinked for like a quick second, and he dropped the ball. And that's all you need. And that's what, when you have that on the opening kickoff, that gets your team going right there. That really gets the team going.
Well, it did. Led by that, then the defense. How about, you know who deserves a shout out this morning, Hugh?
Who's that?
Rhea, when she was with us last week. You remember her bold prediction for the game? Quinyon Mitchell would have his first interception of his career.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, she did say that.
Rhea called it here in the midday show.
She said she's very proud of that call. She did call it, though. Shout out to Rhea Hughes.
Yeah, she should be proud. And we should be proud of this defense because they dominated yesterday. On a day, we could be real, the passing game, again, was a little choppy. Hugh, let's talk about it. So, It's interesting because you called this all week. You thought the pass game would be rusty. A lot of people did, right? But you thought, like, basically the way they won the game was exactly how you laid out last week. You thought they would win the game. What's interesting, though, is Jalen started 6 for 6, right, including the touchdown to Jahan Dotson right after the fumble. So it almost felt like, hey, maybe he's not going to be rusty. But then they went like an hour of real time without a completed pass. It was like after the 6 for 6 start, it felt like forever again until they had the drive where he threw the 2 passes to Devontae and then the big touchdown to Goddard where they scored again. It was a weird day for the passing game because the stats are typical of a lot of Jalen games this year. It just was a long stretch where it was really quiet.
I feel like in the beginning of the game, and just looking at it as it's playing right now, they made some manageable throws. The throws were manageable for Jalen. And as the game progressed, they tried to throw a little bit more at him and tried to stretch the field a little bit. And that's where it became a little disjointed. That's where it was, Jalen looked a little indecisive with the football and things of that nature. But I think for the most part, you went out and did what you wanted to do. Saquon got 116 yards or something like that.
And he could have more if he didn't slide.
He has a tough sledding, but that's the way the game plan should be. I know that we are all enamored by the fact that most quarterbacks, you look at them and the stat line isn't what you want it to be when it comes to Jalen Hurts. But the bottom line is this. This team has been winning like this all year long with the defensive formula and the Saquon Barkley additive in that, if you will. So I don't see any reason why you got to change anything right now. As we progress through these playoff series, sure, Jalen is going to have to make some plays. But I did not expect that to be the case this weekend because Jalen was coming off a concussion protocol.
Well, it was a very I watched that game yesterday, and it was a microcosm of the 2024 Eagles. Dominant defense, great running game, incredible offensive line play. I mean, the first touchdown of the game, Jalen Hurts had 6.75 seconds in the pocket. Hugh, could you ever remember, or when you played, could you ever think of a moment? And sometimes a quarterback will scramble out and run around, right? Mahomes does that. Jalen does it. Vic used to do it. Donovan. That's one thing. I don't think I can ever recall, Hugh, a quarterback having 7 seconds inside the pocket.
No, that's a lot of time. And still didn't know where to go with it. That's a lot of time.
Well, he found Dotson. But it was an offensive line story yesterday. It was a running game story yesterday. And mostly was a defense story like this whole season. And the passing game was choppy. I mean, the first thing that hit me yesterday was how great the defense was. But also, I can't ignore the pass game was choppy. 215-592-9494. We'll go to your phone calls here in a sec. We got a lot to do today. And Merrill Montage, we'll talk to Merrill himself. We will get into the A.J. Brown book and maybe a little reading Giglio later, whatever the heck that was. A big Hugh breakdown on Nolan Smith. And, of course, we'll talk about who we want now in the divisional round. It'll be decided tonight between the Vikings and the Rams. Let's hear, though, Saquon Barkley after the game yesterday giving a shout-out to Vic Fangio and that defense.
Vic is dialing up. Them boys is over there balling, making plays. They got the swagger that they have right now. They're over here, they're doing this. And, what I think we could do better is we could capitalize on the plays that they're making, the turnovers that they're making. I will say that's something I think that we lacked on. Everyone want to get on if we're rusty or if we're this and that and third. Our defense went out there and got 3 turnovers. Our special team got a turnover, and we scored on that drive. We scored a touchdown on the drive. But if we do that, it's a different outcome. It's a different game. But at the same time, the same outcome would be the same. We both got to win.
Well, he's right, Hugh. I mean, they scored 22, which is fine, but they also the defense gave them 4 turnovers. I can understand why the offense probably thinks, hey, we should have scored more than 22.
Yeah, they should have. But the bottom line is this: they won the game, and there's always playoff games, even the ones that you win in the Super Bowl, where you look at some opportunities that were missed. But fortunate enough for you, you had a good enough day, and you had a good enough day offensively that it didn't cost you anything because, as we all know, these things are one and done. So you go back to the drawing board, and you get ready for the next one. That's all you can do. You're still alive. That's the bottom line. It's like being in a gladiator fight. The fight wasn't what you wanted it to be, but you're able to fight next week, and that's all that matters. The
ultimate survive and advance. All right, let's hear from the quarterback yesterday, Jalen Hurts. In yesterday's game, 13 of 21, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. The passer rating was shiny, but obviously there was a lot that just looked blah in the passing game. Hurts after the game yesterday talking like what Saquon did about having to take advantage of those opportunities the defense provides.
you guys got off to a hot start, and then it seemed like maybe there was like a little bit of a lull there. Was it something they were doing, or was it execution?
It was execution. It was rhythm. We gotta find our rhythm early in the game, and I think first and foremost our defense played their tails off, and created turnovers, and I think ultimately, when you have those opportunities, you got to take advantage of them, and that starts with me.
Well, it does. And look, moving forward, I've said this, I'll say it again. To win the Super Bowl, I think Jalen's going to have better moments and be better and throw for more yardage and win the game more with his arm than just the defense run. But to beat the Packers, it was good enough. It was more, Hugh, there's different kinds of games, and maybe it's this coming Sunday against the Rams or the Vikings. Maybe it's a title game against the Lions. I do think at some point they're going to need more of the pass game. But yesterday, they didn't. I mean, when the defense plays that well, Hugh, you could win a game like that, or two.
Defense travels well, man. I mean, you look at it. You talking about A.J. Brownlee got one catch yesterday. And 3 targets or something like that.
More reading than catches yesterday.
Yeah, and that's something where, you normally don't see a win in a situation like that. Mm-hmm. But this team is super talented. And it goes as Saquon Barkley goes. He had relatively a quiet day yesterday for his standards. But, 25 carries and being able to control the clock the way that you do, I wouldn't be surprised if it's similar. This game this weekend coming up is similar to the one we just saw.
It could
maybe be a little bit better, maybe a little bit more passing and completions. But it's one of those things. I look at it like this: if your defense is playing well, and it's unfortunate that it looks like N'Kobe's not going to be out there, but if your defense is playing well, it's going to give your offense a chance to get going. And if it sputters in these next couple of weeks and people can't get a real beat on what they're trying to do, that might be to our advantage to a certain extent.
So you mentioned there how talented they are. Here's what struck me. Yesterday, the Eagles only were 2 of 11 on third down. They only completed 13 passes. And if Saquon doesn't decide to slide at the end of the game, they win the game by 19 points or 20 points. I mean, it was 22-10. Saquon he had that touchdown. He just decided to slide there. It's 29 or 30-10 if the Eagles wanted to, and they didn't even play that great at times. 215-592-9494. What hit you the most from yesterday? Let's celebrate a playoff victory, 2 wins to a Super Bowl appearance. The Eagles 22, the Packers 10. Was it that defense or was the choppiness of the passing game?